You know what's interesting about people who are tired of existing right now? They rarely look as broken as other people expect them to. Most of us imagine someone at the edge as visibly sad, unable to function, and obviously asking for help. But many exhausted people still answer messages, finish assignments, show up to work, and laugh at the right moments. Their life may continue moving on the outside, while something inside has quietly stopped participating. The phrase "tired of existing" can sound dramatic, but the experience is often painfully ordinary. It can grow from chronic stress, depression, grief, loneliness, sleep loss, illness, or several burdens arriving together. It does not describe one personality type, and it does not automatically mean the same thing for every person. What it describes is a nervous system and a mind that may have been carrying more than they can keep metabolizing. Here are 11 psychological patterns often seen in people who are not necessarily tired of life, but tired of living this way. Sign 1. They wake up exhausted before anything has even happened. The first pattern is a fatigue that sleep does not reliably erase. They may open their eyes and immediately feel the weight of every unfinished task waiting for them. Even ordinary responsibilities can arrive in the mind as one enormous, undivided demand. This happens because prolonged stress keeps consuming attention long before the day asks for conscious effort. The body may be lying still while the mind has already started rehearsing problems, obligations, and possible failures. From the outside, getting out of bed looks like a simple physical action. From the inside, it can feel like agreeing to carry the entire day all at once. Their exhaustion is not proof that they are weak, but it is evidence that something needs attention. Sign 2. Things they once loved no longer reach them. The second pattern is not always sadness, but a disturbing absence of emotional response. Their favorite music still plays, familiar food still tastes the same, and people they love are still nearby. Yet the internal signal that once said "this matters" arrives faintly or not at all. Clinicians call a persistent loss of interest or pleasure anhedonia, and it can appear in depression. To other people, this flatness can look ungrateful, bored, or impossible to please. But they are often not rejecting joy. They are frightened because joy no longer seems able to find them. The mind may reduce its emotional range when it has spent too long absorbing pressure without recovery. What disappears first is sometimes not the ability to live, but the ability to feel rewarded by living. Sign 3. They become highly skilled at looking normal. The third pattern is a performance so practiced that even close friends may not notice it. They smile when expected, make jokes on cue, and say "I'm just tired" because it ends the conversation quickly. Competence becomes camouflage, especially when other people depend on them to remain stable. The better they function publicly, the less permission they feel to admit how badly they are struggling privately. They may fear that honesty will create panic, disappointment, unwanted advice, or a burden someone else must carry. So they edit the truth into a version that keeps everyone comfortable. The cost is that people respond to the performance while the real person feels increasingly unseen. A convincing smile does not prove safety, just as productivity does not prove emotional health. Sign 4. Tiny decisions begin to feel strangely impossible. The fourth pattern appears when a depleted mind loses room for choices that once required almost no thought. What to eat, which message to answer, or whether to shower can become exhausting negotiations. Decision-making depends on attention, working memory, and the ability to imagine consequences. When those systems are overloaded, every option seems to create another obligation. They are not necessarily indecisive by nature. They may simply have no spare mental bandwidth. A gentle question about what they want can feel like one more test they might fail. This is why they sometimes choose nothing, delay everything, or repeat the same safe routine. What looks like laziness may actually be a mind attempting to reduce the number of demands entering it. Sign 5. They withdraw while secretly hoping someone notices. The fifth pattern is a painful conflict between needing connection and lacking the energy required to maintain it. They cancel plans, leave messages unanswered, and disappear from spaces where they once felt alive. Yet many of them still check their phone, hoping for contact that does not require explanation or performance. Isolation can feel safer in the short term because nobody can ask for energy they do not have. But the longer the silence continues, the more shame convinces them that returning will be awkward or unwelcome. Their absence is not always a test, a punishment, or evidence that they stopped caring. Sometimes it is the behavior of someone who believes their depleted presence would only disappoint other people. A low-pressure message saying "you do not have to reply" can reach further than a demand for an explanation. Sign 6. Time begins to lose its shape. The sixth pattern is the sense that days are passing without becoming distinct memories. When life contains little novelty, pleasure, or emotional contrast, the mind has fewer landmarks around which to organize time.
The person moves through routines on autopilot, completing actions without feeling fully present inside them. A week can disappear quickly, while a single afternoon still feels endless. From outside, it may seem as though they are wasting time they should be using to fix their life. But survival mode narrows attention towards what must be endured now, not what could be built later. Long-term goals become difficult to imagine because the future feels like a larger copy of the present. Sometimes the first useful horizon is not next year, but the next hour that can be made slightly easier. Sign 7. Their sadness often comes out as irritation. The 7th pattern is commonly misread because emotional exhaustion does not always look soft or tearful. It can look like impatience with noise, anger at small interruptions, or resentment towards harmless requests. When the nervous system has no remaining margin, minor stressors can register as major intrusions. Then guilt arrives because they know their reaction was larger than the moment deserved. The people around them may see attitude, while they experience a system constantly bracing for one demand too many. This explanation does not excuse cruelty, and exhaustion does not erase responsibility for how others are treated, but it does identify the real problem more accurately than simply calling the person difficult. Repair requires both accountability and enough rest, support, and boundaries to stop the overload from repeating. Sign 8. Rest stops feeling restorative. The 8th pattern is the confusing experience of resting physically without feeling recovered mentally. They may sleep for hours, spend a day in bed, or scroll until the night disappears. But removing activity is not the same as creating recovery. If the source of stress remains active, the mind may use quiet time to worry, rehearse, compare, and criticize. Even passive entertainment can keep the nervous system stimulated while giving the illusion of rest. Real recovery often requires safety, reduced demands, predictable sleep, human support, and some sense of control. Persistent exhaustion can also have physical or sleep-related causes, so assuming it is just psychological is a mistake. A motivational video cannot replace a medical or mental health evaluation when fatigue keeps disrupting daily life. Sign 9. They invalidate their own pain before anyone else can. The 9th pattern is the belief that other people have it worse, so their own struggle does not count. Comparison becomes a courtroom where their suffering is rejected for failing to be the worst suffering imaginable. But pain does not become harmless simply because somebody else is carrying more. In fact, constant comparison often adds shame without removing a single source of distress. They may postpone asking for help until their life looks bad enough to justify it. The more useful question is whether this is making daily life harder, not whether they have earned support. Help is not a prize reserved for the person who collapses most visibly. It is most effective when it arrives before exhaustion becomes a complete emergency. Sign 10. They may not want life to end so much as they want this version of life to stop. The 10th pattern requires careful language because relief fantasies and suicidal intent are related but not identical. Some people imagine disappearing, sleeping indefinitely, or reaching a place where nobody needs anything from them. Even without a plan, repeated thoughts about not existing deserve serious attention rather than being dismissed as ordinary stress. A person does not need to be certain they would act before telling someone what their mind has been saying. The safest move is plain honesty with a trusted person, a clinician, or a crisis service that can respond in real time. If they have a plan, access to a method, or doubt they can stay safe, the situation is urgent. They should move away from anything they could use to hurt themselves and get physically near another person. Contacting local emergency services or a crisis line is not overreacting when the alternative is facing that moment alone. Sign 11. Tiny signs of wanting are often still present. The final pattern is easy to miss because it rarely looks like dramatic hope. It may be curiosity about tomorrow's episode, concern for a pet, or relief when someone sits beside them quietly. These moments do not prove that everything is fine, and they should never be used to minimize real danger. But they show that exhaustion can coexist with threads of attachment the person cannot currently feel strongly. Recovery often begins through those threads, not through a sudden revelation about the meaning of life. It may start with reducing one demand, naming one truth, treating one condition, or accepting 1 hour of company. People often wait to feel motivated before changing anything, but motivation may return only after the load becomes lighter. Until their own hope becomes available, they may need to borrow structure, care, and belief from somebody else. What is striking about all 11 patterns is how easily they are mistaken for character flaws. The exhausted person looks lazy, the numb person looks ungrateful, and the withdrawn person looks indifferent. The irritable person looks difficult, while the high-functioning person may look completely fine. But behavior is sometimes the visible surface of a burden that has remained invisible for too long. Being tired of existing is not an identity, a personality type, or a destiny. It is a state that can have different causes, different levels of danger, and different paths towards relief. No video can diagnose that state, but it can help someone stop treating their pain as a moral failure. If this described you, choose one real person and tell them more truth than "I'm just tired." If you might hurt yourself or cannot stay safe, stop watching and contact emergency or crisis support now. If this gave language to someone you care about, share it with them without demanding that they explain themselves. Subscribe for the next video, and remember that needing help is not the same as being beyond help.